Have you ever been in the position where you felt like you were stuck in a situation where all of your decisions were made by someone else? Imagine existing in a world where you're always walking on eggshells, never quite sure who you can trust, and every relationship is like it's being manipulated from behind the scenes. That's the sad reality for Robyn and something that most of us can't even start to grasp. But the reality is, her situation is all too familiar for those trapped in toxic relationships, particularly when manipulation, betrayal, and emotional abuse are involved. This isn't a tale of love that has gone horribly wrong. This is a candid glimpse into the emotional damage that a dysfunctional family unit can inflict on an individual. It's the covert struggles that occur behind closed doors, the power struggles that leave emotional scars on the heart, and the long, slow, painful path towards self-emancipation. Robyn is here at the center of the storm, struggling to reclaim her life from the sway of two men, Kody and Dayton, who on the surface appear to be supportive partners, but are actually the masterminds of her emotional pain. Today, we're plunging into a world in which power control and emotional manipulation reign supreme. Robyn, Dayton, and Kody are all players in this complicated game, but each of them is carrying their own set of burdens, secrets, and heartache. And as you view their story go down, you'll come to comprehend the psychological effect it has upon a person when they know they've been living in a poisonous web of lies. This is the tale of Robyn's struggle for independence, her battle to escape the manipulation of Dayton and Kody, and her path toward gaining the courage to exist on her own terms. It's dirty, it hurts, and it's a lesson that occasionally the most difficult thing to do is walk away from what will feel like family, because when manipulation is at stake, you're never really free. I'm Aariaa, welcome to TLC Next Reveal, and today we're getting deep into the emotional struggles and achievements of a broken family. So grab some snacks and get cozy, because this one's gonna be a roller coaster. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss all the juicy details, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss how far individuals are willing to go for power control and self-emancipation. To thoroughly comprehend Robyn's dilemma, we must first establish the context and delve into the web of relationships that constitute her life. Picture being a member of a polygamous household where the distinctions between love, power, and control are perpetually confounded. This is precisely the world that Robyn, Dayton, and Kody find themselves in. Their lives are entangled in a multifaceted web that isn't so straightforward as merely a family. At the center of this family dynamics is Robyn, a woman whose search for self has been fogged by years of emotional manipulation and financial deception. She's been having relationships with two men, Kody and Dayton, who both in their own way have manipulated her into believing that they are the only ones who have her own best interests at heart. But behind promises and the love, there's a different tale, one of power struggles beneath the surface, agendas, and emotional abuse. Kody and Dayton are hardly the perfect couple. They both have their share of faults and dark secrets that gradually start to surface when Robyn begins questioning all she's ever known. Kody, with his seemingly domineering air, has a history of making choices that have Robyn wondering about her own self-worth. Dayton, though gentler, doesn't avoid the manipulation pattern. 2. Financial, emotional, and mental. Both men have had Robyn under their control, keeping her from experiencing even the fullness of freedom and independence. The manipulation isn't only emotional, it's financial too. Robyn has been kept in the dark regarding important financial decisions that affect her life, decisions made by Kody and Dayton, decisions she never gave full consent to. This deceitful chain leaves Robyn feeling helpless as she tries to take back her life. But as the pressure mounts, so does her determination to escape. This isn't merely about breaking free from two bad relationships. It's about rediscovering herself. taking back her independence, and learning that the strength to leave it all behind was already inside her all along. And as you can imagine, Robyn's path to self-emancipation won't be easy, but every step that she takes towards independence will make the emotional journey even stronger. To see Robyn's emotional journey has been nothing but a war, a nonstop battle to regain her sense of self in the turmoil of manipulation, control, and emotional abuse. She hasn't been just moving through a polygamous family situation. She's been struggling to survive in it. Both Kody and Dayton have had starring roles in keeping her roped to a life of emotional turmoil, each in their own fashion, building up to a feeling of isolation that Robyn couldn't shake until she started to see that she didn't have to live this way anymore. At first, Robyn's struggle was invisible to the world outside. She kept up the facade of the lovely wife striving for her position in the family and trying to contain the expectations of two quite dissimilar men. But beneath the storm, a tempest was brewing Kody as the patriarch exercised a control that was more psychological than anything. He wasn't openly abusive, but it was the insidious emotional manipulation which hurt the most. His coldness, his passive-aggressive comments, and his aloof attitude created an atmosphere where Robyn felt invisible and unheard. Kody's demeanor with Robyn was not only controlling, it was dismissive. There were times when he acted without including her, disregarding her suggestions, treating her as an afterthought in her own life. When they did converse, it wasn't with regard to her needs or wishes. It was regarding what Kody desired, what was acceptable for him. And with time, those little moments of neglect accumulated so that Robyn felt emotionally choked. The perpetual tug-of-war between desiring to be a good partner and knowing that she was merely not being valued began weighing on her. It wasn't merely the quiet that hurt. It was the lack of consideration, of warmth, of thoughtfulness. She was living within a relationship that had become bereft of authentic affection. There was Dayton, whose method, although appearing to be more gentle, was equally insidious. His type of manipulation was not as overt as Kody's, but it was equally strong. Dayton manipulated Robyn emotionally, using his claimed love for her to keep her under his control. He would draw a vision of them together in the future, promising her things, which only ever remained far-off dreams. He would behave like, though Robyn were his sole true partner, only to pull back emotionally when the pressure came on. It was this push-pull that left Robyn confused. Dayton's assurances were empty words, and she couldn't help but feel the emotional cost of them. She wanted to believe in the future they might have, but the disappointment cycle made it obvious that her needs were secondary to his own, and the money manipulation. Let's not forget that aspect. As much as Robyn wished to be free, she was locked into a system where she relied on Kody and Dayton for her economic well-being. Their having control of the purse strings was another means of keeping her in line. She was not told about the finances of the family, forced to have faith in their choices without ever being completely a part of it. All this financial dishonesty was not just about money. It was about control, about making Robyn never feel like she could walk away without losing it all. But as smothering as all of this was, Robyn started to shift. She started to notice the fault lines in the system that had been keeping her captive for so long. Her pursuit of freedom didn't occur overnight, but it was a slow burn that eventually became unignorable. One of the pivotal moments that stands out in her path was when she decided to talk to Kody about their future together. Not a dramatic, fiery fight. It was a subdued but potent dawn of realization that she could no longer live a life ruled by his decree. She wasn't merely fighting for her own freedom. She was fighting for the ability to be noticed and appreciated as an individual, not merely as an extension of his dominance. Then there were the small acts of rebellion. moments that revealed Robyn's increasing realization that she was worth more. In a particular episode, Robyn stepped back from a family event when Kody dominated the discussion, refusing to allow her any space to express her opinion. She excused herself quietly from the scene, a small yet powerful act of defiance. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive. It was Robyn's way of stating, "I'm done." She wasn't going to be an accessory in Kody's life anymore. These little things added up until one day she couldn't ignore them anymore. Another defining moment was when Robyn started questioning the dynamics of the family openly. She wasn't aggressive, but there was a change. In one episode, she began to speak out more in group sessions, refusing to let Kody and Dayton call the shots on their relationship. She no longer asked permission. For the first time in a long time, Robyn was beginning to make her own space, not only in her family, but in her own life. She was taking back her voice. As Robyn became more self-aware, her emotional turmoil was changing into something much more empowering. She understood that her journey to self-emancipation wasn't all about battling Kody and Dayton. It was about struggling for herself, and with each little act of defiance, each whispered choice to assert herself, Robyn was creating the foundation for the life she really needed. It wouldn't be easy. The psychological cost had been decades in the making, but the journey of self-emancipation had already started, and there was no turning back. Dayton's contribution in this family is a central one, and it's one that cannot be missed when we are discussing manipulation and deceit. Unlike Kody, whose control is more obtrusive and founded on authority as the father, Dayton plays a more subtle, sometimes sinister game. His manipulation is not loud or forceful. It's one of emotional blackmail, subtle coercion, and financial pressure. It's this subtle manipulation that makes him so dangerous because it's difficult to detect until it's already too late. Dayton manipulated Robyn from the beginning, with their relationship as a means of keeping her caught in his web of control. Their relationship isn't built on mutual trust and understanding. It's about Dayton manipulating Robyn's vulnerabilities. He always placed himself in the position of Robyn's true partner, the one who understood her better than the other men did. This false illusion of intimacy gave Robyn Dayton an illusion of safety. She would say everything nice tell her they would have a future and never follow through his words, although sweet were empty and employed as a means to make Robyn emotionally reliant on him. He held out the prospect of a future for her, well aware that he would never really make the maneuvers required to construct it. One of the most powerful manipulative tactics of Dayton was his application of emotional blackmail. He understood how to pull at Robyn's heartstrings, with her fear of losing him, to manipulate her choices. There were countless instances throughout the show in which Dayton would get Robyn to feel guilty about wanting more for herself. If she even broached questioning the family unit or Kody's actions, Dayton would remind her of all they had been through together, and that it would be a betrayal to their relationship. It was an emotional trap. Unless she agreed with Dayton, she stood to lose him, and in that loss, she worried that the very foundation of her identity would shatter. Dayton knew this weakness, and he used it at every opportunity. But Dayton didn't simply rely on emotional manipulation. He also weaponized financial leverage. He wasn't as direct about it as Kody, but Dayton did have a say in the family finances, which had an impact on Robyn's independence. There were times when Robyn wanted to control her own finances in order to have some say in how money in the family was being spent, but Dayton would gently shut her down. He would tell her that the future they could have together was a team effort. But in reality, this was only a means to maintain her in financial subservience to him. By making Robyn feel as if she could not make independent financial choices, Dayton further entrenched his control on her. If Robyn wished to leave this stifling paradigm, She would require more than mere emotional fortitude. She would need financial independence, and Dayton worked to keep her from achieving that. Dayton's relationship with Kody also contributed to how the family situation evolved. At times, Dayton acted as the peacemaker, attempting to calm Robyn and Kody down, but his motives were not always genuine. While he appeared to be attempting to defuse the situation, he was operating behind the scenes to keep his grip on Robyn. It's like Dayton viewed himself as Kody's equal, but without equal authority. So he employed alternative strategies to acquire his power within the family. While Kody employed the patriarch role to proclaim his mastery, Dayton employed his connection to Robyn to control her into believing that everything he did was always for her good. This two-pronged method of manipulating both Robyn and Kody allowed Dayton to stay in the background, yet retain control over the situation from behind the scenes. One very revealing scene in the series was when Dayton seemed to challenge Robyn about her need for independence. But instead of giving her room to pursue her feelings, he used his love for her as a weapon. He informed her that if she departed, she would be leaving behind their common aspirations, guilt tripping her into remaining in the toxic ambit of the family. It was one of those old-fashioned emotional manipulation tricks where Dayton got Robyn to feel she could not depart without inflicting incurable harm. At the same time, he would never actually offer her what she desired: true independence, respect, and equality in the relationship. Instead, he kept her on a leash, not with physical chains, but with psychological ones. And let's not forget how Dayton played the victim in the family. He would insist on coming across as misunderstood or underappreciated, especially when Robyn began questioning their future together. He knew precisely how to twist things, so he'd be portrayed as the martyr, which only further kept Robyn in a position of guilt and self-doubt. If she stood up for herself, Dayton would make her feel she was being ungrateful to somebody who loved her no matter what. This emotional manipulation built a poisonous atmosphere where Robyn never felt secure to speak her heart. Dayton never allowed her the freedom to choose for herself. Instead, he always made her feel guilty for even thinking them. In the times when Dayton did speak with Kody, it was obvious that he was attempting to keep Kody's attention away from him and his part of the family dysfunctions. Dayton played the silent game, allowing Kody to bear the bulk of the criticism while Dayton worked behind the scenes. But don't get it wrong, Dayton was equally manipulative, equally deceitful, and equally emotionally abusive as Kody. He didn't need to be loud to have control. Dayton's quiet manipulation, his capacity for emotional blackmail and economic coercion, made him as treacherous as Kody, if not more so. Robyn's final realization of Dayton's manipulative behavior was a wake-up call, but one that was painful. It meant that she was not only trapped in a poisonous marriage with Kody, she was emotionally trapped by Dayton's manipulation. Finally, Dayton's place in the family dynamics cannot be avoided. His manipulation, however more subtle and quieter than Kody's, was a large contributor to the perpetuation of family dysfunction. Dayton's behavior was a sobering reminder of the ways in which unhealthy relationships can be obscured in plain view, of how manipulation can become invisible when disguised as love and vows of a future together. But as Robyn began to awaken to the reality, she came to realize that Dayton wasn't the loving husband he professed to be. He was just another piece in the game of emotional manipulation and deceit. And ultimately, Robyn would have to decide between her loyalty to Dayton and her loyalty to herself. KodyBrown is always the self-styled patriarch of his polygamous clan. But what few people know is how his dominance extends far beyond mere emotional and psychological manipulation. His control of the family's finances is likewise manipulative, and this is one of the most discreet features of his power play. Throughout the series, fans have seen Kody repeatedly utilize his role to exercise dominance, not only over his wives, but over their joint financial resources as well. It's a subtle but conscious design that leaves the women perpetually in a position of dependency, which naturally fuels his desire to control them. One of the most obvious instances of Kody's financial manipulation is through how he manages the money of the family as a unit. From the beginning, it is apparent that the Browns' finances are in shambles, and Kody takes this as a chance to assert control. Rather than being open about the financial trouble, he manipulates events to enable his wives to feel as if they have no other choice but to take his direction. Kody is capable of influencing the money matters in ways that suit him and enable him to sustain the illusion of control. Whether it's the conflict over the family's property investments or the constant war for resources, Kody's leadership always appears to prioritize his own needs. But it's not merely about money, it's about control. Kody employs money as a means of alienating the family, setting rifts between his wives when they can't see eye to eye on how resources are shared. The financial dishonesty is another means by which he manipulates them into feeling like they're always standing on shaky ground, making it more difficult for them to escape their situation. It's a masterclass in emotional blackmail in which he can undermine their autonomy by keeping them financially dependent. One of the particularly telling moments of Kody's controlling behavior is when he attempts to influence the wives into making monetary choices that suit his wants, but without completely explaining to them the true risks or expenses involved. For instance, Kody's insistence on proceeding with the Coyote Pass project without assuming full responsibility for the financial costs. It subjects his wives to puts them in a vulnerable position. His guarantees of a future windfall always come embedded in just enough hope to keep them from seeing the reality. He's more concerned about holding on to his authority than about making the family financially secure. Through it all, Kody's real goals come into focus. It's not about creating a loving family. It's about creating a family that will do his bidding and fulfill his fantasies. His domination of the finances only magnifies the emotional manipulation, and the impact on his wives is impossible to deny. They're caught in a cycle, and it's difficult to imagine how they can escape this mess of lies. Kody's actions aren't merely controlling, they're poisonous, and as the seasons progress, his efforts at manipulating the family with financial pressure only become more evident. The emotional damage to his wives is clear, and it's heartbreaking to witness how they've been forced to choose between loyalty to Kody and their own emotional and financial freedom. Robyn's journey toward self-liberation is nothing short of a powerful emotional awakening. For so long, she was trapped in a cycle of emotional manipulation and psychological control, not just from Kody, but also from Dayton. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment when Robyn came to understand the reality of her circumstances. It was more of a slow, smoldering realization that started to form deep within her. But the moment that seed of consciousness was sown, it grew very fast, and with it came an existence of vicious internal conflict. For a long time, Robyn existed in a state of emotional paralysis. She would question decisions made by Kody and Dayton, but those questions were usually hushed by her fear of losing them, or worse, losing her sense of belonging. She was always torn between the life she was taught to accept and the life she secretly yearned for. Her own thoughts must have been torn apart between the emotional connections that had been manipulated in position and her increasing awareness that something was not quite right. But then the tipping point, that moment when Robyn became aware that she was not merely a passive observer of the family's malaise, but an active player in her own narrative. One of the turning points was when Robyn finally said enough. The emotional hold that Kody and Dayton had was no longer sufficient to silence her. She began to speak out for herself, her need for change, her need for more. In various episodes, you could witness the change in her attitude. She was not the same woman who had previously allowed Kody's coldness and Dayton's quiet manipulation to keep her small and quiet. She began to stand up for respect, to voice up for her feelings, and most importantly, to own her own story. In one emotional session, Robyn told her she couldn't continue to sacrifice herself for a family structure that was not working for her. This was a turning point. It was as if a load had been removed from her shoulders. She didn't have all the answers yet, but finally realized that she was worth more. She was willing to end it, being the passive target of love with strings attached, strings that were all about manipulation and control. What made Robyn's journey relatable was just how raw and honest it was. Viewers watched her at her worst, trapped in a web of confusion and self-doubt, and then witnessed her struggle to slowly but surely start to untangle herself. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but every little step forward was a victory. The inner struggle she endured to choose between honor to self and responsibility to others was something that many could not help but relate to. Whether you've been trapped in a toxic relationship, a manipulative relationship, or simply felt the weight of control, Robyn's journey was a reflection of those inner struggles we all endure when we finally muster up the guts to take control of our own existence. Her acts of defiance, whether it was standing up to Kody or calling out Dayton on emotional manipulation, were more than just little wins. They were indicators that she was taking back control, and in doing so, she not only freed herself, but was also setting an example to viewers that they too could choose their own journey, no matter how difficult or unknown it may be. Robyn's path to self-emancipation was really one of finding again her voice and her value, and that was itself a success for anyone who observed it. As Robyn started to forge her own way towards self-emancipation, the responses of the rest of the family were a complex combination of support, puzzlement, and sometimes resentment. Christine, Janelle, and Meri each had alternative visions of what was going on, and those only contributed to the already tense family environment. Christine, who had also experienced her own process of emotional conflict with Kody, appeared to get Robyn's need for independence. You might notice a touch of empathy in Christine's expression, as if she identified the same emotional toll signs that she herself had endured. While Christine did not exactly intervene there, in a direct sense, there was an implicit understanding. She knew what kind of power Kody wielded, and Robyn's action to resist, reflected on her. Janelle, however, was more reserved in her intervention. Although she never directly dissented from Robyn's choices, it was evident that Janelle was treading a thin line. She had always been a little more independent within her own relationship with Kody, so her strategy was more practical. Perhaps too practical to appreciate the full nature of Robyn's emotional distress, Meri regrettably appeared more on Kody's side, with a tendency to remain quiet or make only minimal support for Robyn's behavior. It was like Meri, still struggling with her own or troubled history with Kody, wasn't quite ready to escape the toxic dynamic herself. This made for an unspoken split within the family, with Robyn stuck in the middle, attempting to reassert her own territory while sorting through these multifaceted and often opposing family dynamics. As Robyn moves toward independence, the future of her Dayton and Kody appears unclear, filled with hope and possible heartache. Robyn's path to self-emancipation is only just starting. She has known freedom, and there is no going back. But the path before her is not obstacle-free. Kody's manipulative grasp on her is not easily shed, and Dayton's intrusion in the family structure still casts a long shadow. For how long will Robyn be able to remain firm in her path to freedom? Will she keep standing strong against their domineering methods? Or will the pressure of the broken family compel her to make difficult decisions for Dayton and Kody? Their hold on the family is slipping, but that doesn't mean they'll go quietly. Will they alter their ways, or will they keep manipulating those around them to maintain control? Can they ever be saved, or are they bound to repeat their harmful behaviors? What happens next can either be a healing and personal relationship growth story or a continued struggle story. Robyn's destiny and the destiny of the family in general is left hanging. What do you think? Will Robyn discover peace and independence, or will the cracks in the family be too extensive to mend? The true question is, how far will she go to take back her life? Only time will tell. What an emotional roller coaster this has been, right? Robyn's path to self-emancipation reminds us all of the value of being able to identify manipulation in relationships and the strength we all possess to take back lives. If you've ever found yourself in a position where you felt trapped or controlled, I'd love to know your thoughts and experiences below. Remember that you're not alone, and there's always hope for change. If you like this in-depth look at Robyn's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to TLC Next Reveal for more gripping content. Stay tuned for our next show. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.